Pushkin.
Soccer Mommy is one of the standout singer-songwriters to emerge over the last half-decade. She was born Sophia Allison and raised in Nashville, Tennessee, where she started playing guitar at 6 years old. Sophia started posting her songs on Bandcamp in 2015 under the name Soccer Mommy, the summer before moving to New York to study music business at NYU. 2 years later, she dropped out after signing her first record deal with Fat Possum. Since then, she has released 4 albums and toured with artists like Vampire Weekend, Phoebe Bridgers, and Mitski. Soccer Mommy's latest album, Evergreen, is a reflection on grief and loneliness, and was described recently by Pitchfork as the most laid-back and pastoral music of her career. This is Broken Record, liner notes for the digital age. I'm Justin Richmond. Just a quick note here. You can listen to all of the music mentioned in this episode on our playlist, which you can find a link to in the show notes. For licensing reasons, each time a song is referenced in this episode, you'll hear this sound effect. All right, enjoy the episode. Here's Bruce Headlam with Soccer Mommy.
Okay, it's the first great song. Well, actually, it's the first song and the first great song off your new album. So, yes. Sophia Allison, Soccer Mommy, thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're a total trooper. You come in, you pick up the guitar, I need some reverb, and then you just sit down and play. That was easy. No muss, no fuss.
It's always easier alone without a band with you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They're bringing you down?
Well, no, it's obviously I love playing with them, but it's simpler.
Yeah.
You know, it's more straightforward. Everything I write is just guitar and vocals while I'm writing it, so it's just like playing it at its simplest form.
Okay, for the guitar players out there who are saying, wow, how'd she get that sound? What was your tuning?
It's open D. It's D-A-D, F-sharp A-D.
Oh, okay, so like Dad-Gad, but you turn down the
Yep,
F-sharp.
Exactly.
Do you write a lot in that?
I do, actually. I use it a lot. I mostly use that, open A, which is E-A, C-sharp, E-A-E, and standard.
Mm-hmm. When did you, because you started playing very young, when did the different tunings come in?
That wasn't until like Soccer Mommy, pretty much, till I started writing songs for that. I think it was probably about when I was like 19 or 20. I think it's just a really good way if you've been playing guitar for a long time and you kind of know the neck a bit, you know, chord shapes, to take all of that knowledge out of your hands a little bit and kind of erase that. Like, you can get a little bit like formulaic, I think, sometimes when you know where to go next. And it definitely takes that away.
Does it take a lot of rethinking, or is it the sort of thing you find a chord, you find a good sound, and then you move it up and down the neck a little bit?
Yeah, it's kind of, you have to rethink a lot, but you do find things that I think in open A, for example, if I were to play like a dominant 7 chord, just anywhere on the neck pretty much, if I were to play that kind of shape, it would be a minor chord. Just randomly found that out. But you just kind of, you mess around until you find something that sounds like a chord, sounds recognizable, and then, yeah, you can put it anywhere and just have to maybe work around open strings sounding a little funky and try to stay away from those if it's not working.
I read somewhere your father was a neuroscientist.
He is a neuroscientist.
What does he study?
I have no clue.
Really?
He was like, I know he was studying amphibians when I was younger. I think he just runs like a lab for college students now. So he's not doing anything crazy. You know, it's just kind of lab work, I guess.
Think he would have some thoughts on open tunings and how it sort of rearranges your neural pathways, I'll bet.
Yeah, I think it really does. It completely makes you relearn that which you know, and like chord shapes. You know, you have these new chord shapes that if you were to play them in standard, it's like mush.
And how did that change your songwriting?
I think it just gave me more space to be inspired, honestly. I still write in standard too sometimes, but it's a lot easier to come up with something new and fresh and something that triggers something new in your brain, you know, melodically or just kind of vibe-wise, if you don't have such a set idea of what you're going to do and what you can do.
Does it become a little more almost subconscious what you're doing?
Yeah, you're just looking for sound, honestly. Like when you're doing a open tuning and you don't know chords, you're just looking for something that sounds cool, and you're just like putting your hands in places, kind of guessing. And if something sounds weird, and you can just move your finger over a fret, move it up a fret, down a fret, see if that changes anything. And then once you get those kind of shapes, you can get a little bit more normal with what you're expecting to do and chord progressions and all that. But it definitely is something that kind of unleashes this freedom in the same way that people can write amazing music without understanding an instrument at all. It's like you can kind of get a freedom out of it.
Mm-hmm. And some people, if they learn an instrument too well, feel a little constricted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you've got a lot of, and you always have in your music, you've got a lot of really lovely sort of harmonic moves in your songs. Do you write, is it the harmony come first and then the melody?
It's always chords first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's always guitar chords. Not necessarily the entire song written out, but I kind of find a chord progression or something and start working off of that with like lyrical and melodic ideas. Those lyrics and melody usually kind of form together. Mm-hmm. The lyrics maybe take a little longer. She tweak a little bit, but I try to make sure those are intertwined because I think that cadence and everything is really important.
Mm-hmm. You have I think it's in the song Change. I think you've got a nice key change right at the end of the chorus, mm-hmm. which I can't quite remember what the progression was.
I don't know what the key change goes to. I wish I could tell you because it's in a crazy tuning, so I have basically no idea what I'm playing.
Well, that's good.
It's like a Joni Mitchell tuning that I saw, but I think it's DAC FAD, I think. DAC FAD.
Yeah, that sounds like something.
It's definitely strange.
That's a very deep hole you're going into if you're doing Joni Mitchell tunings.
Yeah.
Did you just hear one of her songs and start looking them up?
No, I think actually my guitar player, Julian, who's my partner too, had tuned one of the guitars in our house to it.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes he'll just give me one and say, try this. And if I don't find something in a minute, I'm like, I don't like this one. But if I find like a really pretty sounding chord, I'm like, ooh, mm-hmm. interesting.
You've also, I don't remember the song. You've got a lot of borrowed chords in songs. You go to a lot of minors when people would expect a major. One song, you've got a really nice walk up from like the minor sixth, the flat sixth, flat seventh to the tonic, which is really unexpected. Mm-hmm. So your songs are full of, in an era where most songs we hear have like 4 chords.
Yeah.
Yours are always surprising.
Yeah, I love chords. I love, surprising changes that make you like kind of feel it, I guess, when it comes to a point in a song and there's a strange chord and you're like, whoa, interesting. Mm-hmm. I think that was something that used to be used a lot more, particularly in pop music. Like even when I was growing up, I think there was a lot of really sneaky stuff going on in pop music. Mm-hmm. You don't see it as much now, I don't think, but I think you can still make things that are catchy and, poppy, so to speak, and have those kind of things thrown in there. And it's kind of like being sneakily kind of crazy in the middle of a song that's like pop.
And, you give people a little, like you said, you got a jolt when you find those things. So, of course, it gives the listeners that too.
Yeah, it feels good when you hear people do that. I mean, you look at like Nirvana even, for example, and you hear these kind of sometimes slightly off chord progressions that are really satisfying with the melodies and everything. And I think it inspires something a little different, a little more exciting sometimes.
Mm-hmm. I hear quite a bit of Elliott Smith in your playing too, but I don't know if that's...
I love Elliott Smith. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're not going to stare at me blankly like, what the...
No, I love Elliott Smith.
Okay. Yeah. I think a lot of the major, minor, borrowed chords, he does that a lot. I hear that in you. And that's Beatles, I guess, ultimately. But
yeah.
Okay, we're really nerding out on chords, so maybe we should back up. The new album is Evergreen. Tell me about how it came about.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long process writing an album. I pretty much started right after the last album came out. So summer 2022 is when I really started getting into it. Changes, which you brought up earlier, is a little older, actually. I wrote that during making the last album and said, this is not going to fit, and kind of kept it for later.
Now, are you the kind of writer who I'm sitting down every day, pencil, paper in hand, guitar at the ready to write for 3 hours?
I'm really not. I don't actually usually write anything down. I don't kind of log anything. If I'm going to log it, it's going to be like a quick demo that I just have kind of done, and that's done.
You use your phone?
No, I have like a tape machine, I have like a 4-track Tascam, like a Porta Studio that I'll use, and I'll just put one mic and
But the
acoustic.
old tape one, or?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I'll do
you're making
tapes.
cassettes?
Yep, I make tapes of my demos.
Wow.
I like it. I think I'm a very scattered person. I put them into the computer, obviously, afterwards, but I like knowing that there's just a pile of like physical tapes of all my stuff that I could go back to if I lost something or anything like that. But
I didn't know you could even still buy those.
yeah, you can. You can buy cassettes. Yeah.
No, I mean even the old Tascam, because it was.
Oh yeah, no, it was a used one. It's not new. Yeah,
because famously that's what Springsteen did Nebraska on.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I'm from Nashville, so there's a lot of that stuff floating around. I feel like that's kind of something that a lot of people had and nobody wants anymore in Nashville, so you can find a lot of those.
Yeah. So what spurred the writing of this album?
Most of the songs are about just a loss that I had in my life, and kind of going through that process. They're not all about that, but there's a lot of that in the record. And I think that was really what kickstarted, it's time to write about something different. I think every album, even if there's similarities, you have all these themes and these ideas that you're stuck on for a while, and it takes time after the album is finished being made to kind of get your head off of writing more stuff that fits with this idea and move on to something new, even sonically, like just kind of what kind of vibe you're wanting. And M was the first song that I wrote for this album, and I think it really felt like fresh and new compared to what I had been doing, and it was very clear to me what I was going to be doing for the next little bit of time.
Was it a conscious thought, I've got to write about this loss?
No, honestly. I don't think writing is ever conscious for me. I think, I sit around, I just play guitar, and I don't really like to, trying to think of the nicest word to put it, but just, I don't want to sit around and shred or learn other riffs or do stuff like that. I don't really do that. I just sit around and I play chords, and if I find something I like, I start writing a song with it. And I think the music inspires the theme of the song, the ideas behind the song. You get, from music itself, you get a feeling, and you can move off of that.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the sound on this album. And for people who haven't heard your previous album, Sometimes Forever, they should, first of all.
Thanks.
But it's a very lush album with a lot of studio effects, a lot of production. Mm-hmm. This one is lush, but in a different way. It's got beautiful string arrangements. And I don't know how much you had to do with those particularly, but it feels a little more austere, a little more direct maybe than the previous album. What was the feeling you wanted from the record?
I wanted that, honestly. I wanted it to feel direct. I think it being something really personal, I found that the last album was not unpersonal, but it wasn't as personal as some of my work has been in the past. And writing this album just felt like when I was, 17 and writing songs to put on Bandcamp, and it was very tender and intimate in a way that was a little bit uncomfortable. Like at that point in time, I didn't really want to share music with people I knew. I might post it on Twitter, but I was not going to publicize it.
This is when you were 17?
Yeah, when I was first starting like Soccer Mommy stuff and posting on Bandcamp. But it was kind of secretive and private because it felt really personal. And it felt like that again, it felt really, really straightforward and personal. And the songs themselves, I just wanted it to be like that at the center, that really basic, stripped back version, like what I just played. I wanted that to be at the core of everything for every song, and there to be, accompaniment around it to help it blossom a bit. But I wanted to feel, just like light and airy and remind me of music that makes me feel like lifted and, feel emotional, but like light, like I'm riding the wind a little bit, which for me is like Emmylou Harris, Joni Mitchell, like that kind of stuff I listen to all the time when I'm feeling that way, or like jangly, like pop stuff that really just kind of, you can feel it. It feels so light. So the strings were part of that idea. I did not arrange the strings. The person who played the strings arranged the strings and did an amazing job off of like notes,
But you had some ideas of...
Yeah, I wanted strings and flute in particular on the record really, really bad. And I was very specific about that because I think it's part of what pulled it together sonically. I think if there had been synths or like mellotrons and things like that, it would have just not had the same feeling to it. It really needed to be that like organic kind of sound that's a little bit imperfect. And Ben, the producer, found a flute player and found Raven, who did the strings, who's in the UK, and he's amazing. He's great.
there's very, particularly Evergreen, which is the last song, has a very different string sound.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's even a solo string, but it's violin, but it's got really lovely textures throughout.
Yeah, it's like haunting. I think we had mentioned like Johnny Greenwood type of thing, and he really took to it. It just sounds, a little eerie, a little haunting. Those kind of stretches between chords, I think, really bring it to life.
We'll be right back with more from Soccer Mommy after the break. We're back with Soccer Mommy.
So let's go back before you press send on Bandcamp or upload, I guess. You were born in Switzerland, right?
Yes.
But you grew up Nashville?
Yeah, Nashville.
Okay. And was your family musical?
My parents are not super musical. My dad does play guitars as like a hobby. My grandma was a pianist.
Oh. Okay.
But I didn't really know her. So I definitely didn't get it from family, forcing me to do it or anything. I was kind of the first one in the family when I was really young to be like, I want to play music. And then all my siblings kind of did too.
Okay. Where are you in the family order?
I'm middle. I have an older sister and I have a younger brother.
Oh, okay. And then was there a particular song or memory you have of music growing up that piqued your interest?
Yeah, I don't even know what started it, to be honest. I know that the first music that I was listening to was like my dad's CD collection, which was like, we all really liked The Who and Springsteen. So he had CDs of that, like greatest hits that we would listen to a lot. And I always really loved Springsteen. I still do love Springsteen.
I wouldn't have guessed you love Springsteen from your music.
Yeah, I know. It's not exactly an obvious pull, but I think he's just such an amazing songwriter, honestly. I think for something that's kind of like macho, like kind of like greaser, manly energy a lot of the time, his lyrics can be so beautiful. I think they paint such vivid pictures in my mind of like stuff that just reflects, I think, American, small town, not even small town, but just not big city type of life, like just certain like normalcies that really, paint a beautiful picture. Was there
a song in particular that you liked of his?
I've always loved I'm on Fire. When I was younger, I loved Thunder Road. I still love that one. I think the entire like opening lyrical part of that song is absolutely amazing. But yeah, it was a lot of hits. So it was like hits, Born in the USA,
That's okay.
Hearing that kind of stuff. Hungry Heart was great. But yeah, I always loved that kind of stuff. I think that was the first thing that really made me love music. That and like early 2000s pop from I was like 5 or 6 years old. So that kind of stuff was really big.
And what was your first instrument?
Guitar.
Oh, it was? Okay.
Yeah.
And did you take lessons or did you just sit down with one day?
I started with me sitting down with one. I had gone to a like charity concert for my brother's preschool and gotten a toy guitar, and I played that a lot. It sounded awful. And after enough time, my parents were like, okay, let's get like, a little baby acoustic guitar. And I just loved it. So I took lessons for a lot of my life, just casually took guitar lessons and just always really liked it, but particularly for the songwriting. I liked writing songs on it more than anything.
What were your first songs like?
My first song was called What the Heck is a Cowgirl? And it was, pretty much just a chorus and me strumming a open guitar with no chords, basically. But it was mostly nonsense, I would say. By the time I was like, I guess like 7 or 8, I started playing with one of my friends who lived nearby, like across the street, and was a drummer. And we were both very, very young, but we would play songs together that were kind of like pop rock, I guess.
Was there a moment where you thought, I think this is more, I want to do something, this could be my life?
I always wanted to do it. I think I can't remember a time where I didn't want to make music for a living, but I think I gave it up, like the dream a little bit, when I was probably like, maybe like 16. I think I just kind of reached a point where I was like, what are the odds of this just becoming like a career for me? I just like to play music. And I just got a little bit realistic about it and decided, I'm not going to go to college for music. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go for a normal thing. And honestly, it wasn't depressing as it sounds. But
you're making it sound pretty bleak.
I think it was just like, I can play music for the rest of my life, no matter what. Like, I can do this for myself regardless. And around the time that I was graduating from high school, I particularly was like, I'm going to start recording my songs in a really basic way and putting them on Bandcamp just for me, just for fun, because it's something I like doing. It's something I want to work at. And there was no expectation of, it becoming what it eventually did. But I think that was good. I think it can be very defeating if you really want to do something and you really care about, music, and you're like dying to do it for your life, and you get old enough where you have to reach a point where you say, this is not going to be more than, just a hobby and something that I love doing. I'm going to have to work at something else.
You thought you'd get the disappointment out of the way early.
Yeah, like crush it before. Like, I'm not going to like spend years of my life hoping
That's good
and dreaming.
for children if you crush their little dreams.
Yeah, you crush it early, and then if it happens, great. It doesn't mean you have to stop.
Yeah.
I think that,
that
being
sounds
realistic
like a healthy
about
attitude.
I think it is to an extent. I think, being real about your chances at success. It's not about whether you're good at something. It's just about if something you have to say is of the moment, honestly, and it's a little bit of luck and it's a lot of hard work. You can do all that hard work and still be saying, I need to get a job.
Yeah. But then what was the impulse to put stuff up on Bandcamp?
I think it was just for fun. Honestly, I got like back to the task.
Were you in a band at that point?
I was not in a band. I've never really been in a band besides my very young 2-piece childhood band. But I just wanted to, I was writing songs, and I got for Christmas or something, my dad gave me one of the Porta Studio Tascams that is digital, which makes it really easy to transfer to using the tape one because they're very similar.
Right.
But it's a digital one, which those are really great. They have like internal mics in them, so you can just record with it onto there and go for it. You can sing into the thing. You can pop it in front of your.
You could have done all that just with GarageBand, though, or something
Yeah, you
else.
could, but I like working on not a computer. I don't really like.
Oh, that's interesting.
I don't know why. Something about the computer, there's too many options of things to do to something. I'm like, let's just get the raw sound sounding pretty good. Let's see if we can make it a way that we like to hear it and deal with it. Because I think I get crazy if I start pulling up EQs and all this stuff. I start losing my mind.
So it's nice having scarcity is good.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, at the time, I just wanted to get the songs in a place where somebody could listen to them, not in this, produced type of space. I just wanted to do something really simple, pop them up, and kind of have them for me. Like, these songs are more than just something I played for a while and then never thought of again after a couple years.
How many tracks would be on those early?
I'd usually pop like four or five onto a drop, so to speak. I deleted a lot of them at this point, but I kept up some of the stuff where I was like a little bit more, had been doing it a little more and was a little more proud of it, and kind of felt like, oh, I'm gonna put up like something that feels more like an EP or something, rather than just throwing things up really quick. Because I would turn it around. I'd record something, put it into the computer and just throw it on the internet, just because I was like excited about it, I guess. But yeah, once people were listening, I was like, let's get that old stuff hidden away.
The early years. You only have early years, of course. You're 26, so
I'm 27 now.
27. Well,
I'm getting up there.
Yeah, your
I'm
early
approaching
years.
30.
You're
at this
over
point.
it now. One of the great things about listening to all your music, but this record particularly, is there are those writers who the guitar is a vehicle for their songs. Like, I need to say something, guitar or a piano is the way to do it. And then there are people who just like guitar sounds, and who the sound of it kind of drives them. And a lot of the bands I grew up listening to, like particularly, REM, the Smiths particularly, fall into that category. They clearly just love the sound of a guitar, and that's what drives the sort of songs. When did you get your first electric?
I think I was 7 or 8. I got one of those baby Strats, as you may have seen.
So
I had a baby
Okay.
Strat. And yeah, honestly, I prefer electric in the long run. I write with acoustic though, usually, just because I'm just sitting there playing guitar. It's easier to hear things with an acoustic. But I do love the sounds. I think that if you're gonna go in the studio and record something, why not be particular about every sound you're making, everything that you're recording? And you can make something simple and also put a lot of thought and effort into the sounds of everything. And that's like, you only get to do that every couple of years, go in and record. Like, you got to make the most of it.
Now, are you the kind that fiddles with, you have to have absolutely the right pedal, and this isn't quite right, that has all the kind of paraphernalia that goes with it? Oh,
yeah, definitely. I think that you've got to get into that kind of stuff, really. Like, there are some sounds that, like, even on this album, for example, like electric guitar sounds, a lot of my rhythm tracks are very simple. It's just like through a old like twin amp, and it's got some reverb on it. But when you're getting down to, more out front, like riffs and lines and, textures and all this kind of stuff, you've got to take your time on it, because you're never just going to pop on your pedal and get something that's the most inspiring thing in the world. You have to keep changing things and messing with things, and make sure you're throughout an album that you have an idea for how you want everything to sound, but you also have to change things song to song. You can't just, set up all the settings and record something. Otherwise, every song's going to have the same sound to it.
Is there anything new you used on this album that you found particularly exciting?
Yeah, there's a lot of new stuff. It was a new studio, so all of the like outboard gear was basically new. We did a lot of stuff with the, I think it's H3000. I'm pretty sure we used a lot of stuff off of that. I was using a Von Gone pedal called Ultra Shear a lot, just for really simple like reverb, vibrato type sounds. That's really nice. It sounds very spring-like. And it's really pretty. So there was that. There was a lot of H9s in the studio that were happening. So there's a lot of that, a lot of H9 chorus going on between everybody, but mostly Julian, I would say.
Although you played all the guitars on this record.
Not all of them. There's the guys are on it too.
Okay.
Julian and Rodrigo has a little bit of, he's doing some guitar, and 12 string is usually Rodrigo because I hate playing 12 string. It's like the most frustrating instrument in the entire world. So he did a lot of the 12 string.
Do you play a 12 string electric?
No.
No.
I just think it's so annoying. It's so unbelievably annoying. They sound really cool.
Right.
But I would rather have somebody else have to deal with it than me.
Okay.
It's just so much tuning. And I feel like my ear gets really sensitive at a certain point if I'm trying to mess around with something that much. So yeah, he's playing some 12 string. Julian's playing a lot of like chorusy guitar lines because we do some live taking. There's a mixture of live takes and getting kind of drums and bass down and building on top of that, and a lot of pre-production too that was kind of meshing in by the end and coming in and saying, this is here, we're going to get rid of this, we're going to get rid of that, kind of moving stuff around.
Do you like that process?
I do. I love it. I love being able to make something really exciting. I never do it at home. I never do it on my own, but it's like so much fun to be able to make something sound just like exactly how you would want it to sound and build dynamics and all that kind of stuff. I think it's really important.
After this last break, we'll be back with the rest of Bruce Headlam's conversation with Soccer Mommy. We're back with Soccer Mommy.
This is terrible to admit, but sometimes, I'll go on YouTube and I'll watch guys talking about this pedal or that pedal and the sounds they get out of this. And honestly, everything sounds the same to me. That's a terrible thing to admit. I appreciate on records it's going to sound different, but often the sounds the differences seem minuscule to me. And I think if that were me, I'd be like, I don't have time for this.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that does similar things, I think, for sure.
But for you...
I just think with any pedal, especially if you're going to like watch a video or watch someone else use it, you have to use it yourself and see how you like it. Because I think there's a lot of, there's always a lot of editing you can do on the pedal to find different ideas. And I think something that's fun in the studio too is being able to mess with a lot of pedals that you would never, or at least I would never be using live. If you're playing like rhythm guitar chords and stuff, you're not going to be using certain things that you can then get weird with when you're in the studio. I think like my favorite weird pedal is the Microcosm by what are they called? Hologram. Hologram has some great stuff.
Did you use that on this album?
I did. I didn't use it on guitar. I don't think, from my memory. I used it with a vocal mic, putting it into the pedal, and it's like it kind of makes loops, but they're like weird, very affected loops that have, there's different options and different, things that parameters you can mess with. But it's really great for making weird vocal loops. Like you can sing into it and you can turn the the thing all the way up wet and just have none of the dry signal really still in there and get these weird, like echoed, like vocal, like humming sounds that kind of make ambient textures.
Where did you use that on this record?
It's on Lost. It's just like a ambiance in the entire background where I'm doing some humming that kind of, makes these like ghostly kind of sounds, and then adding like whistling for sounds like birds a little bit on the loops and stuff like that. And I think on Changes too, there's a lot of that kind of makes this like dreamy, atmospheric type of sound. I think that's the only two where it's really coming out.
So I do want to talk about a couple of the songs. Driver, which starts with the great line, "I'm a 5'4" engine waiting to move." Tell me about that song. It's got a great, very interesting melody, big jumps in that for just like a major seventh, I think, or something. Big vocal jumps. So tell me about that song.
Yeah, that's one of the ones that is not kind of in the context of, I guess, the entire album. But it's just like kind of a fun one for me. I think I'm very spacey and very all over the place a lot of the time, and my partner's very grounding and not really as much like that, but really puts up with it and tries to keep me on track with certain things. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. And I wanted to make it, take one of these examples, like driving. I can't count how many times I've been driving and completely started going towards something that is not where I'm going, and realized...
You mean literally when you're driving?
Literally, yeah. Literally when I'm driving down the road and past my turn way back, and I don't even know where my brain has decided we're going now, and kind of having someone in the car to say, hey, what route are you taking right now? Where are we going? And being able to be brought back a little bit. It's like, such a goofy little piece, but I think it really pulls that feeling of like having someone with you to ground you and, be that other half a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Although, arguably, you're doing in the car just what you do with the guitar, which is you're messing around. You're just kind
wandering
of in a flow state. Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, isn't that true?
Pretty much. I do think so. I think it's like you're just looking for, just going in whatever direction it takes you and looking for something exciting.
Mm-hmm. And Some Sunny Day. Talk about that one.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was going to bring that one into the studio, which seems crazy to me now because I love how it turned out. But that was one of the first songs we worked on in the studio when we did like pre-production, and it really just kind of quickly took off, and it was so obvious where it was going to go, and where it was going to lead in response to the rest of the album. I think it's really important to find those sonic ideas early on and then be able to spread them across the album and kind of figure out what you're wanting to do and do it. And that was really instrumental, I think, for me personally. It really has that lightness and that airiness, and it's a little bit dreamy and it's soft. But it's also kind of like, it's like dreamy, and when you look at like a dream filter and there's a lot of light and it's kind of like hazy but like blinding a little bit. And yeah, it was really exciting for me with that song because I think that I was unsure of how it would work with how many parts there are. There's a lot of chords going on, and there's a lot of sections that are different from each other.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes blending those together can be difficult in a studio setting, even if you can sit and play it, going from part to part and making each one feel special and interesting can be hard, but it was seamless.
Was there ever temptation, we'll take out this one idea, we'll take out the middle eight,
No.
No?
I never will compromise.
I see.
There's certain things I would, in a studio setting with a song, edits that can be made, like, let's shorten this part, let's half this part, blah, blah, blah. But I think with a song like that, every section is so important and you can't cut it in half, really. They're just like, the way that they're laid out, it just wouldn't make sense, I think, in my brain at least, to chop anything down. It like all goes into the flow of everything.
Was that a song you wrote in bits and pieces as well and then joined, or did you write it as a coherent whole?
No, I wrote it as a whole. And I remember thinking, this is like, I could hear it in my head, kind of what I was going to want out of it, but I was trying to imagine if it was going to be something that would feel really clunky. But I ended up taking it in because I really liked it and found it exciting. I'm always excited by a song when it has lots of different chord changes and turnarounds that kind of bring everything from one place to another and blend it in that kind of way.
Yeah, it's got a very nice like descending figure in the chorus.
Yeah,
that song. It really, and you're right. It's stretched out, so when it comes, it's very, very satisfying.
Yeah.
And then what's the song about?
It's just kind of about feeling, all of this darkness around you, this sadness, and feeling kind of like you're drowning in it a little bit and looking around and not seeing, I guess, the hope and the way out, but clinging to the idea of positivity. I guess, like having this shred of positivity and being like, this is not all there is. This is not all there will ever be. And I know that. It just doesn't feel like it in the moment.
Yeah, you've got you keep saying how you want a lightness in this record because there's a lot of references to light in your lyrics. And that one is, the trick of the light won't keep me down, which I thought was a very nice light.
Yeah.
Keep me warm, pardon me. I can't read my own writing.
No worries.
Trick of the light won't keep me warm. What image how did that come? Do you remember?
I think for me, it was like the image of laying in bed, tired, worn down, no motivation to do anything, and seeing like shadows and tricks of the light, like shapes kind of just stretched out on the ceiling from lamps and the light outside and all this kind of stuff, and kind of letting your imagination run free a little bit. Or like even just the feeling of, I think a lot of us have experienced, you know, being at night and thinking you see a shadow in the corner and it's scaring you. But that kind of feeling, but almost like in a, you know, you can convince yourself that something is something else. Even if you know it's not. It's like a bit of a trick on your brain.
Yeah, I don't know if you grew up in a house with a lot of trees around, but that's always when I was growing up, we had a lot of we had a lot of trees, and so having the trees always sway in the breeze, it just creates this effect inside. You just think there's always something there.
Yeah, it just creates a feeling of you're not alone, and I feel that a lot of the time. I'm not a religious person, but I do. Sometimes you can just feel like energy sometimes around you, I think. And especially if you lose someone, I think it can be comforting to feel their energy still in places or in actions, things you do, feeling that the kind of ghost of that. It's not a haunting in a bad way. It's like a positive feeling of, you know, even if somebody's gone, there's always parts of people left around the world that just kind of remind you of a certain person. You can feel that again.
A very different song is "Dreaming of Falling," which seems a little more suicidal. This one.
It's a little more off the edge, I think. I actually had COVID when I wrote that song, and I was very sick, and I think that added a sense of impending doom to the situation. But yeah, it really was a moment of like, I don't care, there is no looking forward, and there is, being stuck in this place of needing to move forward, needing to move on with your life, and not even just needing to, you are, because there's no other possibility. And also clinging to the past, which you can never go back to. And even if you could, it wouldn't be, there anymore waiting for you. So it's, that kind of stuck purgatory feeling of being stuck in between two things and hating change, but also there's no choice in taking the change or not taking it. It's no option.
It also feels a little bit like wanting to end it all, though.
No, definitely. It's got this horrible feeling of the rest of life is less, in a sense, which I think is something that I've always struggled with, I think, with losing things or losing bits from the past, and even simple stuff like growing up and moving on from people in a not difficult way, but just naturally. And looking back and seeing that you don't have these things anymore and that your life is kind of ever changing. And it's like, I think with a situation like that, it can feel very much like you're just on a new path now in life and you have to do it and there's no choices. And, it's depressing. It's a depressing idea to not have the, control over your life a little bit, and over changes and over making decisions and letting those things happen slowly and naturally. I think when there's usually change in your life, it fades and it moves and you don't even realize when it's happened. And in a situation like that, it's like sudden and you're just cut off from where you were. And you're changed as a person, but there's no going back to the old person you were. And there's also, you don't really want to let go of it either.
But you seem someone who, you've put out a lot of demos, live records. You've put out a new album every 2 years, which these days is a healthy pace. You went to school in New York. We didn't talk about that. You went to NYU for a couple of years and studied music business. And you seem to make a lot of, did your parents help you with contracts and lawyers, or because you were signed very early, someone else would look at you and say, well, here's a person who really, took control of the situation at a very young age.
Yeah, I think honestly I wasn't very I didn't realize what I was getting into, I think, when I first did a record deal with Fat Possum. I didn't really realize that it was going to be a career. I was still thinking, I took time off from school. I didn't even drop out. I was thinking, I'm going to go back. I'm just going to go do a fun tour. It's going to be great. I was thinking it was going to be very different than what it ended up being. I'm glad it ended up being what it was, but I was not expecting it, and I was not prepared for it. I did, when I first signed my deal with Contract, it was a very simple deal. It didn't have a lot of pages and legal
Just
language.
asked for your soul.
Yeah, basically,
in
trade
return
over
to-
your soul.
Yeah.
I had, my dad found like a friend of a friend who's a lawyer who like looked over it for like 15 minutes and was like, yeah, this is all, normal. Like this is all what it means. It's pretty normal for something like this. And I signed it and went for it. It was a short deal. It was only one record, really. It was like a collection thing that I did called Collection of Bandcamp songs we recorded with very, very little money into it. And then my first album, Clean. So it was a very short deal, and I was out of it really quick, free to go, do whatever I wanted. And at that point, I had my own lawyer when I signed my next deal. So I didn't have to sign much. I didn't need a lot of help in that department. I think what made me be kind of level-headed about things is that I was always like, I was still in the headspace of this is not, like, your dream is not coming true. A little bit, it's like you're gonna get to tour, that's great. Like only focus on things that are definites, I guess, and rather than getting lost in what could be or what someone could offer you, I think. Because a lot of people sign to labels that tell them all these things they can do for them and give them these huge dreams and ideas of what they could be that are like far beyond their reach at the current moment. It's like, we could turn you into this a little bit. And I think getting in over your head is always a bad idea, I think, because you are the one who's going to do everything for yourself at the end of the day. Like, if you get big, it's because you worked really hard at writing music and you wrote a song that was great, and then there was all the help of the press and all of that. But you have to be driving it, I think. And if you're not, no label can take you and just like poof, turn you into like a star or something. It's not like a fairy tale. You still have to work at things and you have to grind, and that's really how you get somewhere.
Did you hear promises like that from labels?
Yeah, I've definitely talked to labels before where it was like a lot of big ideas. I think at the time with Fat Possum, it was not big ideas. It was like, we want to do this and this, and it was like, great, small team. They were dedicated to trying to like make my stuff take off, but there weren't any crazy promises, and I didn't have crazy ideas in my head. I was just like, I'll give 110% of anything I have to doing this, and if it takes me somewhere, great. If it doesn't, I'm never gonna regret it. I'm just gonna see things for how they are a little bit, that not everybody makes it.
Are you more accepting of the idea now?
Now I accept it's my career. I do not have to do another job currently.
Do you think you'll ever have to do another job, or you think you'll be able to make music now?
I think about that all the time. I wouldn't be surprised if I did. I don't think I have what it takes to be like someone who's shooting for like the very, very, very top. I used to think that. I just don't think I actually want that now. You can want to be as successful as possible with your music and be ambitious about music and not care about the industry and all of that kind of stuff. And it can be very damaging to people, I think. So I don't think I would necessarily ever be in a place where I'm like getting number ones, top of the charts, like doing all this kind of stuff. I wouldn't necessarily say no to it, but I wouldn't want to fight for it anymore. And I do think about when I'm 50, what will I be doing? So I save my money or at least some of it, and just try to, I don't know, keep getting to do what I want to do, but not pushing myself into a place where it's not fun anymore and it's not, what I want to be doing. I'm making compromises. I don't think you should ever compromise what you want to make in art. I think if you do, you're like starting the fall. You're like gonna lose if you start changing yourself for what other people want or for what the world thinks they want. I think you're just gonna be losing.
You toured with Liz Phair. And I don't know how much time you spent with her.
Yeah, a little bit.
But she is a person who kind of, like you, had these little tapes that kind of just exploded. And she became this very powerful symbol for people. And then a couple albums in, her record label said, write with these other people. And she, like you, didn't write with other people. She wrote by herself. And she got eviscerated for it.
Yeah.
My old employer, the New York Times, wrote a piece that was just made it seem like she, I don't know, betrayed the nation or something.
Yeah.
Certainly betrayed her fans. Did you ever talk to her about like her career trajectory and what people expected of her?
No, I didn't really, but I obviously know a bit about her career, and I think there is a beauty to like kind of where she's at in life too. She's still making records. And I feel like she's just making them for herself. She's doing what she wants to do.
Records, yeah.
And that's where I want to be when I'm, when I'm 50. I want to be making what I want to make and being able to literally live off of it. I don't want to, I don't need to be like this huge star for my life. I don't think that's not something that I think is worth giving up your happiness. And you do lose that, I think, if you try too hard to please other people and you try too hard to do things that are not true to yourself, you lose like your happiness and you end up in a place where you just aren't happy.
So you don't want to buy Michael Jackson's old ranch or anything like that?
No, I mean, hey, if I get there, I'd love to buy myself a big ranch or buy myself, like something. I have no problem with it. I just think you have to be very true to what you want to do, and it's okay to not be comfortable with all of the parts of the industry. I think we really love, as a like society, everybody loves to look at people. Like even like Chappell Roan, I feel like has been talking about it a lot. And you look at these people talking about it and you're like, that's so great that they're saying something that's so great. But people still want the same things from you and they're still going to ask for the same things. And if you say no to doing certain things or to, being involved in certain parts of the world, if you pass on things, it does hurt your career. It doesn't help it. But it's a balance of like, just because this is how the world is and the industry is, it doesn't mean you have to decide you're willing to do it. You still have choice.
Yeah. But, it occurs to me, if you grew up in Detroit in the 60s, and we're talking this way, I would say, well, did you listen to Marvin Gaye and Motown? And you grew up in Nashville in the early 2000s. Taylor Swift must have been everywhere.
Yeah, she was.
Were you a fan growing up?
I was a fan growing up. I was a fan when her first album came out. I remember my dad gave me that on his iPod video. That's the time period, just to set the scene for everybody.
Yeah.
And I loved that album. And then I loved, like, when Fearless was coming out, I loved some of that. But I was also, like, I was a tomboy. And I think for a lot of what was middle school for me, I was a bit like, I don't like music like that. Like I'm cooler than that a little bit,
but you did,
which
like
was
music
stupid because I love it. And by the time I was in high school, I was like, no, I love this. This is great. So I am a Taylor Swift fan.
Have you ever met her?
Yes, actually, I met her one time it was not through this. It was not through music world. I was in high school. I went to a performing arts high school. And they got some of the guitar students to come take a photo op at the opening of her, learning center at the Country Music Hall of Fame. And so we took a photo, me and a couple other students with her.
Were you holding your guitars or?
No, it was just like students, music students.
Standing there,
with
local paper.
Taylor Swift, yeah.
Oh, okay. Is she the kind of star, and not every star is she the kind of star that makes people want to pick up a guitar? and do it themselves?
Yeah, I think so. When I was young, I think definitely I can't speak to it now as much because I'm in a different place in my life. I don't know if I can speak to that kind of inspiration, but when I was younger, I think definitely seeing someone like her, like when her first album came out even, who's writing her songs and is sitting there playing guitar and singing and is just a normal girl, really. It was very inspirational, and the songs really spoke to, I think, a lot of young girls like my age. I think it was speaking to everybody. And they're just also super catchy, super poppy, like kind of immaculate songs. They have a lot of thought behind them. You know, they're not just something that someone wrote really quickly and popped out. So yeah, I think it was definitely really important. I don't think that there was a lot of that going on where it was an artist that felt like they were writing their music and not like they were just a pop star that was getting thrown songs a little bit and kind of doing that, which there's nothing wrong with that either. But I think it was very inspirational at the time.
Now, you've never written with anyone else, is that right?
Yeah, I haven't. Because
that's a big part of sort of the Nashville culture. You phone someone and at 10 o'clock you meet and you write for 2 hours. Have you ever been asked to do that by a label or?
I haven't been asked by a label. I've been asked by people if I want to write with them. And I just can't imagine who could make me want to write with them. I can't imagine what level of like idol it would have to be for me to want to do that. I think writing for me is very personal and it's very like private, and I would feel really uncomfortable. I've like had friends when I was in high school that were like, let's write a song together, and would like try to do it, and I would just be like checked out. I just can't. I can't work like that. I don't know. It feels very awkward, and just I don't want to compromise with anyone if I'm working on a song. I'm working on making something I want to make. I don't want to compromise. I don't want to work with somebody else. I don't want their idea in there if I don't like it. So yeah, I don't know. I get why some people do it. It makes a lot of good music, but I can't.
Now, you say it's so private what you do. Is it hard then presenting your stuff to your band?
No. Honestly, by the time that the band hears the songs, they've been done for a while. Like they've been demoed for like a minute, I think. And it gives you time to decide whether you're assured on it. I think when you're writing, it's such a private process because you're making mistakes. You're thinking of an idea and saying, "Oh, I hate that. Like that's embarrassing that I even thought of that. I don't like that idea. Scrap it." And I think if you're writing with someone else, it'd feel very vulnerable to make those kind of mistakes and have things to say that aren't good. Because that's what, in writing, you're not going to just write everything beautifully and great on the first try. And it's weird to share with someone like the draft process, I think.
Although, for a lot of people, that feeling of vulnerability stops them from writing altogether.
Yeah.
Have you ever had trouble writing?
No. I think I've just been doing it so long, it's thoughtless, honestly. When I sit down to write a song, I'm not even thinking necessarily that I'm going to write a song. It's just going to come or it's not going to come. But I do think that it stopped me from sharing my songwriting for a long time. And it stopped me from pursuing that kind of, you see people, even when I was in high school, people recording their songs and like making a CD and printing it out and selling it and like publicizing it. And I never wanted to do that because it was embarrassing to write a song. You say a bunch of stuff, and if you're going to be honest, it's like really a peek into your mind a bit. And if somebody doesn't like it, it can be so embarrassing. Making art is like one of the most embarrassing things that you could ever do, I think. But that's why it can be so, satisfying and can really break down a lot of walls.
Well, at the risk of embarrassing you, the line in Dreaming of Falling that really stuck out for me was "Seeing the light is an awful trick when I keep going down." So what prompted that?
I think it's kind of a flip from a lot of other moments on the record where there's like this idea of trying to be positive and be not even hopeful, but just cling to these beautiful things. You know, when you're feeling all this sadness, realizing that it's a balance and it's not one thing, it's all of these things, and kind of remembering that memories and painful moments don't have to be just awful. They can be reminders too, in a nice way. And I think in this moment, it was like that, you know, seeing the light, seeing this like warmth, and trying to have this reminder of like the beauty of things is just like a knife a little bit. It's not, you know, it doesn't feel helpful. It feels just like a reminder of what's not there anymore.
Mm-hmm. It's a very powerful line.
Thank you.
It reminded me a little of, did you ever see the documentary The Bridge?
Mm-mm.
It's about the Golden Gate Bridge, and they set up cameras. This is before they put up the protections that makes it harder for people to jump off the bridge. And I think about 50 people used to jump every year.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll actually see, you know, a little splash of water on one of these distant cameras, and then they'll try and find the person's family and talk to them about it. But and famously, one guy jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge who survived.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk to him, and he gives speeches and stuff about this, it's really, you know, he was a drug addict, he was having a tough life, and he jumped, and he said the minute he jumped out and his foot left, all he could think of was like, I don't want to do this. Like, I want to live. But now he ended up living, but you just wonder how many people sort of go through that when they jump. I don't know. That's even more morbid than your song, I think. So I don't know why it reminded me of that, but it just brought that image back to me. I do want to ask you about a couple more songs. Salt and Wound and Anchor are both, they both got these great guitar parts. I think, like, you know, you mentioned Nirvana, Alice in Chains. I think those guys would have been proud of those guitar riffs. Where did they come from?
The Salt and Wound one is me. That was like part of the demo and everything. And I just wanted it to have this kind of moving around the chords, and, you know, a little bit strange, because there's some, within the chords, there's like some notes that have, you know, a very particular feeling, I guess, that it gives you. And it kind of, I love slidey half-step note things all the time. I love writing that. It's just fun to play, honestly. If you sit down with a guitar and you play that riff, it's just like moving in half-step increments all over the place. It's really fun. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was a really important part to me. I feel like that really brought it from being just this song to like bringing it to life a little bit, and, you know, being a little bit more rocking. Anchor, that's actually Julian playing that part, that like arpeggio on the acoustic guitar. I think that's Julian and Rodrigo doubling each other, perhaps. I'm pretty sure with like a 12-string and an acoustic and electric or something.
Damn 12-string again.
Yeah, that 12-string. I don't want to play it. Somebody else can do it.
You take it.
An acoustic 12-string too is awful to play. I mean, my hands are just not used to that. But yeah, that song was so difficult to get right. I wrote it, and I knew what I wanted it to feel like, I guess. After we tried to like mess around in the studio, I was like, I want it to have this like drunken, like sailor type of like woodenness to it. But it was very, very hard to get that correct without it turning into something else. You know, turning into something that's like a little corny, or like swung a little bit, or too heavy with how the chords are really a little bit dissonant at the beginning. So it took a lot of crafting on our parts to figure that out and kind of piece it all together. But yeah, like that guitar riff was like a perfect little transitional piece to slot in, that we just kind of overdubbed onto it. And a lot of the stuff was very slotted in there and kind of arranged after we had a lot of ideas, because it was just such a weird song to try to get right.
I liked the heaviness of it, though.
Yeah, I do too. It's just originally it was like getting too heavy, too like rock kind of vibes. And I think it needs to be a little bit creepy kind of heaviness.
Didn't you complain once? I thought I read this about too many male-dominated punk bands. Did I read you saying?
I mean, I can't disagree.
It was a particular time in your life. You were part of a scene, I guess, in Nashville.
I was in Nashville. There was a big music scene. And I mean, I loved a lot of the bands there and still love a lot of the people there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think growing up, it was very just like the same dudes playing all the same bands. And there's nothing wrong with having fun like that. But I think it felt... at a lot of times, not just for me, but I think for a lot of other people, it felt a little bit stifling.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why there's Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
And Evergreen, which is a beautiful sort of conclusion to the record. Tell me about it.
Yeah, that one is kind of one of my secret faves on the record. It was a song I wrote really quickly and just instantly felt this kind of like haunting kind of beauty that I wanted it to have, because it's got some, kind of majory lifts and some kind of haunting chords in there that make it, with the melodies, make it feel a little bit like ghostly, and it feels sad, but it feels like there's those kind of lifts at the chorus, I guess, so to speak, like major kind of lifts that give it that note of like that light and that lightness and airiness that I wanted it to have. And kind of, to me, it's like when it's winter and it's like snowy or something, there's a lot of dead trees and it's like really sunny. It's like that same kind of feeling of, this haunting kind of warmth, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And what prompted the song? What was...
just the same thing that a lot of the record's about. It's just about kind of, I guess that song in particular, feeling like there's all of these remnants everywhere around you. And for me, I think particularly like in nature, I can see a lot of that stuff, and looking around and seeing it and having these constant reminders, and at times shying away from it and being like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to think about this anymore. I don't want to be reminded of these things. And at other times feeling so connected to it and feeling like there's this like promise that these things are going to be there all the time still and never go away. And, even if someone's gone, things are different. There's all these changes, these like memories and these like, or just feelings, that are connected to certain places and certain things that you can do and times, and looking around and seeing beauty in the world and being connected to that feels lifting and feels like a good promise, I guess, to have.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the trick of the light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you feel like playing another song? But
yeah, I
love
can do
to have
it.
you if you want.
I can do another one. I'm gonna do not one off of this record because of the tuning, but I can play another one. I'll play an old song.
All right.
And then we'll all feel very taken back to my college days. This song I actually did record for a college project. Funny enough, at NYU. The song's called Allison.
Thanks to Soccer Mommy for coming on the show. You can hear her new album Evergreen along with some of our other favorite tracks of hers on a playlist in the episode description or on our website at brokenrecordpodcast.com. And be sure to follow us on Instagram at The Broken Record Pod. You can follow us on Twitter at Broken Record. Broken Record is produced and edited by Leah Rose with marketing help from Eric Sandler and Jordan McMillan. Our engineer is Ben Tolliday. Broken Record is a production of Pushkin Industries. And if you like this show, please remember to share, rate, and review us on your podcast app. Our theme music's by Kenny Beats. I'm Justin Richmond.